Hey folks, so this is the fourth video for this section, and hopefully it'll be a short one on rational inequalities. Go all the way down to where we're going to talk about the number line and using positive and negative charts. Notice that in example 7, parts A, B, and C all use the same function. We're just looking at three different things, whether it's equal, less than or equal to 0, or greater than or equal to 0. We know how to do this with a picture, but we're going to learn how to do this today with a Pos Neg chart. During this video, you're only going to be working with the Pos Neg chart. Come to class and we'll actually talk about how to use our completed Pos Neg chart to finish up parts A, B, and C. So the first thing that you're going to do, as you'll notice in this how-to list over here, is make a list of the factors in the function, whether it's on top or on bottom. So we have two factors. We've got an x plus 1 that's on top. We have an x minus 4 that's on bottom. Secondly, whatever makes the factors equal to 0, they're going to go on the number line. So the first factor is x plus 1. Negative 1 makes that one 0. The second factor, x minus 4, a positive 4 makes that one 0. Number 3 on your tip list says to plug those values into the factors, and you're only going to write a plus sign, a minus sign, or a 0. So if you take that first value there and plug it into your first factor, negative 1 plus 1 is going to give you 0. If you plug in a 4, 4 plus 1 gives you a positive number. So you're only writing a plus, a minus, or a 0. If you go to your second factor and plug in a negative 1 and a negative 4 give you a negative. A 4 minus a 4 gives you 0. So this is the beginning of our Pos Neg chart. Step number 4 says that we should choose values between each of these numbers and on the outsides so that we can plug these in as well. Now, I've got quite a few options for the left of negative 1. You could plug in a negative infinity. You could plug in a negative 100. You could plug in a negative 2. Anything to the left is what you want to plug in. So if I plug in any of those numbers to x plus 1, I'm going to get a negative. If I plug in any of those numbers to x minus 4, I'm going to get a negative. Now let's go in between our two values. So you could choose lots of different things here. You could choose the number 0, the number 1, the number 2. All of these are between. Plug any of those into the factor x plus 1, and you're going to get a positive number. Plug any of those numbers in between into x minus 4, and you're going to get a negative number. Now let's go over to the right of 4. You could choose something like 5, or you could choose something like 1,000, or you could choose something like a positive infinity. Choose anything you want to over to the right of 4, plug it into x plus 1, and you're going to get a positive number. Plug in any of those values into x minus 4, and you're still going to get a positive number. So let me just point out that you only have 5 signs for each of these because there was 5 different sets, 5 different groups that we plugged into. The next thing that you're going to do, and this is tip number 5, I'm going to basically draw an equation bar down here, and I'm going to combine my signs to get a final sign for the function. So what exactly does that mean? I have 2 negatives, and according to my function, those 2 negatives are being divided. So what is a negative divided by a negative? This is going to be equal to a positive. And then we take our next 2. What is 0 divided by negative? 0 divided by negative is 0. And then the next one, what is a positive divided by a negative? That's going to be a negative. The next one, what is positive divided by 0? Now, you and I both know that we cannot divide by 0, so this is an undefined place. We also know that to be a vertical asymptote. And then the last pair is a positive divided by a positive, which is going to be positive. Now, I'd like to do the exact same thing for example 8. Let's just simply talk about how to get the number line and the values, and then we'll come back in class and discuss how to use our Pos Neg chart. All right, so the first thing is let's see what makes each factor equal to 0. Hey folks, there's nothing that makes this first factor equal to 0 because there's no variables in it. But this next factor, -3, will make that one equal to 0. So if I plug a -3 into -2, well, there's no x's. -2 is always negative no matter how I look at it. And if I plug a -3 into my next factor, that's going to equal 0. Now let's choose numbers on the left side and on the right side. So over here, you might want to choose a -100 or a -1000. Negative infinity. Again, it doesn't really matter. This number is always going to be negative no matter how you look at it. If you plug in any negative number to my next factor, but then you square it, it's going to turn into a positive. Now let's go over to the right side. So I'm going to choose a positive infinity. Maybe you want to choose a positive 1 million or a positive 4. You could choose anything you want to over there on the right. Once again, that -2 is always going to be negative no matter how I look at it. If you plug in any positive number past -3, and really it doesn't even have to be a positive number, it could be a -1 is over on the right. But plug in anything you want to. When you square it, you're still going to end up with a positive because it's squared. So now let's go ahead and combine our signs. A negative divided by a positive is going to give me an overall negative. A negative divided by 0, we know that anything divided by 0 is going to be undefined or a vertical asymptote. And lastly, a negative divided by a positive is going to be negative. So come back to class and we will talk about how to use the Pos Neg charts to answer parts A, B, and C.